If the Gray Zone developers came to you tomorrow and said, we can only improve one thing before update 0.5, what would you pick? Would it be the task system, the AI, more endgame content, or just ground zero as a whole? Because the more I read comments on Reddit, Discord discussions, and just kind of the Steam reviews of the game, the more I realize something. Most players agree the game has improved since 0.1, but nobody seems to agree on what matters most next. What are the next steps for the game? I think that's one of the most interesting discussions happening in Gray Zone Warfare right now. Now, let's be honest, Gray Zone today is much better placed than it was at launch. Performance is better, server stability is much better because we can actually play consistently. Movement feels better, and the tactical map does have improvements. The visibility system gave players more information. Long-term contracts added something for veteran players to chase. And despite all the criticism, most players would probably agree the game is moving in the right direction. But the problem is, players still disagree on what should come next. And that's what gets very interesting. I'm going to go over 4 potential options that I think could be the next steps for the developers. Let's start with the most obvious answer, the task system. If you've played Gray Zone for any meaningful amount of time, you've probably felt like, yeah, here we go. We're traveling here. We're going to kill this. We're going to pick up that item, return to base, repeat. I've discussed this a few times in my videos. Now, to be fair, the task system has improved a lot. Shared tasks are on their way in due time. The map is easier to navigate and progression feels smoother than it used to be. But to many players, still the biggest issue in the game, because eventually it stops feeling like an adventure and you start feeling like you're just hitting a checklist or you're doing a routine. So maybe the biggest thing Gray Zone needs isn't more content, but it needs better reasons to interact with its current content. The next option is probably the AI. Now, if this conversation happened a year ago, I think almost everyone would say the AI because they're just kind of standing there and they're bots. Now, the AI has one of the biggest complaints in the game, and while it's improved significantly since then, it's still one of the most talked about topics in the community. Some players think it's a decent place now, others think it's a major work. The reason AI is so important is because it touches everything. It's the thing that you have to face when fighting in normal combat, the obstacle you have to face when doing tasks. When you're exploring, you have random patrols. They're in both PvP and PvE. If the AI feels unfair, it doesn't matter how much content you add, players are still going to get very frustrated. So maybe the AI still isn't the biggest priority, but it is an option to be redirected and fixed. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. The third option I would think is the end game. Now, this is where I think the conversation starts getting a little bit more complicated, because eventually most players reach the same point in the game, the stash is full, money isn't really a problem anymore, and tasks are mostly just finished, or you're just constantly repeating them to get good ammo. And the question becomes, well, now what? This is why so many players are paying attention to systems like the combat outpost and the conflict zones being changed in the upcoming update, hopefully. Not because they're just new features, but because players are hoping they create meaningful reasons to keep, well, logging in, because we're all waiting for 0.5. Because right now, for a lot of people, the biggest problem isn't getting through the game and what it has for content, it's figuring out what to do when you're already done with it. And the fourth option I would say is, well, ground zero, because this kind of goes in tandem with the task system, the AI, the end game, and honestly, I think this might be the answer that a lot of people choose. Not because it's just a new location, yeah, we want new locations, but because of what it represents. Ground Zero feels like a test of whether Gray Zone can create the kinds of player interactions, objectives, and experiences that keep players coming back long term, because a new location by itself is just not enough. The question is whether it creates new stories, new goals, new reasons to play, and if it does, it could end up being one of the most important updates the game has ever received. But I also think a Ground Zero update might not even come until 1.0, but we shall see. So I guess what's my pick? Personally, I don't think the biggest issue is the AI anymore, and I don't think it's strictly the task system either. I think players need more reasons to create their own stories and create their own reason to keep playing the game. The best moments in Gray Zone usually aren't the tasks, I guess, in any game in this genre. The random encounters you come across in PvP situations, the close calls, these are the situations that people remember, not whatever number task you're on and I have so much XP, I'm level 50, whatever, right? These moments nobody really plans for. So that's why I'm so interested in the new changes for the PvP. in the next update, but I'm also thinking the biggest option of the 4 is the ground zero option, and I think it puts in tandem all the work of the other options that we just discussed. I think that would be amazing, but again, I don't think that's right around the corner like a lot of the other options are. But that is just my opinion. If the developers could only improve one thing before update 0.5, what would you choose? The task system, the AI, the endgame, or ground zero, which kind of incorporates all of these, or something else entirely? Let me know, because honestly, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I just think it's one of the most important questions facing Gray Zone Warfare right now and the developer team at Madfinger Games. I think this is going to be a very interesting topic, and I can't wait to read you guys' comments down below.